As we hang our stockings by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon will be there, those of us who spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about William Shakespeare have started to wonder, did Shakespeare celebrate Christmas? Christmas Day didn't become an official holiday in Scotland until 1958. That's right, 1958, the middle of the 20th century, before the Scots celebrated the jolly holiday we all know and love. And for a period of time, Christmas was actually banned throughout the British Isles. So what about Shakespeare? Did he celebrate Christmas? There's a long history of how Christmas came to be celebrated in England, and it starts with the earliest known evidence of Christmas, Pontificate of Julius I. He decreed that December 25th was going to be the celebration of the Nativity of the Lord. From there, an 8th century monk named Venerable Bede wrote about the period of Yule, and this was an ancient celebration. It could have even been a Norse word for the months of December and January. It's where we get terms like Yuletide associated with Christmas. From about the year 1038, you had Christus Mass, which appears as Christ's Mass, and it was the religion of the British that brought in Christian phrases to replace the pagan ones. So Christmas replaced Yuletide as people started associating the December and January celebrations with the marking of Christ's birthday instead of celebrating the winter solstice. In the 12th century, there are records of churches acting out Epiphany plays, so it's looking good for our favorite playwright in terms of there being a precedence for performing plays in connection with celebrating Christmas. And from there, things progressed really quickly because by the 13th century, royal courts and nobilities had so much feasting and celebration surrounding the holiday of Christmas that Edward III actually passed laws restricting the number of dishes at several of the meal times because the celebrations for Christmas were so extravagant. He was like, rein it in, guys. This pendulum swing of liking and not liking, pagan and Christian, for the celebration of the Christmas holidays continued to swing, and by the end of the 16th century, as Calvinism swept through the British Isles, many Christian customs surrounding the holiday were suppressed. They were deemed too papists. And by the time of Oliver Cromwell in 1643, about 50 years after Shakespeare died, Christmas the holiday was actually banned altogether.
I must stop this Christmas from coming!
But it seems like much of Shakespeare's life, during his 52 years, Christmas was experiencing this little bubble of time after it was considered pagan and before it was banned for being too papist. Shakespeare is living in this one section of English history where Christmas was celebrated. That's not to say that Shakespeare is responsible for Christmas. Don't print that. I didn't say that. But it does seem that the bard celebrated Christmas, but he didn't do it like we did today. The traditional Christmas we think of from our childhoods with these trees and the stockings, the gifts, Santa Claus and reindeer, all of that, those traditions happened well after Shakespeare. He didn't mark this holiday that way. For Shakespeare, Christmas was largely a religious celebration put together to mark the birth of Christ, and it was also a celebration of a lot of the Yuletide and carryovers from the pagan celebrations, and was all kind of meshed together into this very uniquely Tudor celebration. Interestingly, the celebration of December 25th as the birth of Christ was largely assigned to Jesus Christ, as we don't actually know the date when he was born, which is funny because we don't actually know the exact date William Shakespeare was born either. Up until the 4th century, actually, it wasn't December 25th that Christmas got celebrated. The holiday was marked in different countries anywhere between January and late September. So around the winter months, but I mean, there was a 6-month span that different countries could celebrate it. And in fact, there are countries that today don't celebrate Christmas until January.
Christmas is over, but they still keep busy.
It seems to be Pope Julius I who was responsible for deciding on December 25th as the actual date of Jesus' birth. And he appears to have picked that date specifically because he wanted to erase the pagan merrymaking surrounding December 25th and Christianize it. And so he wanted to blur religion with the existing feast days and celebrations. One such festival that was trying to be blurred over was the Feast of Fools. It was presided over by the Lord of Misrule, and as Shakespeareans, you may recognize this reference because it was part of Shakespeare's play Twelfth Night. Now, Twelfth Night is a celebration that was first performed in acknowledgement of the Christmas season, and it includes a lot of the Lord of Misrule traditions, like role reversal and costumes and people acting out of their station. The Lord of Misrule was also known as the King of Christmas, and he was the person who supervised entertainments and caused a lot of chaos. Although a Christmas tradition, it wasn't actually confined to the Christmas season. This character would also come back out during the summer festivities. Henry VII appointed a Lord of Misrule and an Abbot of Unreason, and in 1525, Henry VIII appointed one for himself and for Princess Mary's household. And then under Edward VI, a particular Lord of Misrule had, quote, an entire retinue, everything from an astronomer to a master of requests. So within the nobility, this idea was a very popular one. And actually under Elizabeth I, her Lord of Misrule was Robert Dudley, who took the opportunity of role reversal to propose to Elizabeth. That marriage never occurred.
I refuse. It's Shakespeare.
And it was actually under Elizabeth that the entire concept of Lord of Misrule was rather downplayed because she didn't like the chaos and the risk of uprising from the people that this entire celebration encouraged with its chaos and promotion of everyone acting outside of their station. So it seems that for William Shakespeare, Christmas acted as a kind of pressure release for a society that lived, especially under Elizabeth I, quite tightly controlled. And they had very specific rules of what they could eat and what they could wear and how they could act and who they could talk to. And Christmas and the Lord of Misrule and the Feast of Fools was a time when everyone could just let go and they didn't have to follow all of these constraints. And that was the celebratory aspect of it, was the freedom from all of these laws.
Well, I'm glad that's over.
That's it for this week here at Did Shakespeare. I'm Casty Cash, that's Shakespeare Girl, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. Don't forget to sign up for our trip to London in September of 2019. The registration deadline is coming up fast. It's February 1st of 2019. We have to have 8 people for the trip to make. So if you've ever wanted to take your Shakespeare pilgrimage to London and see all of the Shakespeare sites that you don't want to miss, this trip hits them all, and you can come with us for your pilgrimage to Stratford-upon-Avon and London, England in September of 2019. To find out more about the trip and to grab your spot, go to castycash.com/travel Shakespeare.